So there's something that's been, of course, on my mind as usual. And it is this video that I saw of this woman. She's pretty much taken a day trip to Turkey. Yes, Turkey, to go to a hammam because she said that Korean day spas in the US are trash, right? They're subpars. The girlies are out there laying on these plastic, beds, getting body scrubs, and it's nasty, it's terrible. So I just paused, right? Because I'm like, wait, not that travel is bad, not because her moms are beautiful, but I was just wondering, did self-care and wellness start requiring a whole boarding pass? Like I'm trying to understand this situation. So today, I want to explore something that might feel it's gonna feel a little uncomfortable. Like you might be sitting back, like I don't even know if I want to go here with you. But I ain't trying to shame anybody, but I just want us to ask better questions because this whole wellness and self-care travel thing is big, is booming. Retreats, spa tourism, detox destinations. We talking biohacking resorts, luxury reset weekends. So I just think it's worth asking, are we actually feeling restored or are we just chasing aesthetics? Hey, beautiful people. Welcome or welcome back to Well with Mika, where we talk real wellness for your real life. I'm Mika, your cultural wellness ally. And as I said, today we're going to get into this whole wellness, self care, travel trend, okay? And whether the thing we're calling restoration is actually just stimulation in nicer, prettier packaging, okay? So let's start here. I don't think we talk enough about how travel has become performance. The curated breakfast, the infinity pools, the found myself in fill in the blank captions, the aesthetic wellness, excuse me, privilege pilgrimage. Like that's what we're seeing. And if we're honest, sometimes the pressure isn't it's not about rest, it's about relevance. It's about not missing out, that FOMO, not falling behind, not living a life that looks small, but small isn't the same thing as shallow, right? And far isn't the same thing as meaningful because the thing is, if you feel deeply restored after travel, amazing, right? But was it the location? Is it that you unplugged? Maybe you put your phone down, you walked more, ate slower, you spent time outside, you had uninterrupted conversation. Because if that's the case, those things, they don't depend on your geographic location, right? They're not geographically exclusive. So, what we also don't talk about is that travel is not neutral. Air travel contributes significantly to carbon emissions. Popular destinations are struggling with overtourism. Local housing markets get distorted. Natural environments erode. And that's before we even talk about what travel does to your body, right? Disrupted sleep, time zone shifts, airport stress, inflammation from those long haul flights, your immune system strained from that constant exposure to new pathogens. That's a thing. Your body, it doesn't just automatically settle just because the backdrop is beautiful. That's just not how it works. Sometimes, what we call relaxation is really just, like I said, it's just stimulation, right? And it just looks nicer. And then there's the impact on local communities that we cannot dismiss. We can't ignore it. Some destinations are overwhelmed by short term visitors who treat the place like trash. They treat it like a backdrop instead of somebody's home, and we've all seen it. You see some young people going out, and everybody, they go out, they binge drinking, right? They trash the beaches, they leave all this garbage on the beaches, and now you have these beautiful destinations where a bunch of trash is washing up on their shores. The disrespect of local customs, the anything goes because I'm on vacation type of mentality, and then not to mention how big businesses cut off the locals from accessing their own places, like their own beaches. It's disgusting. And that's not cultural exploration, that is called consumption. And if we are raising children, especially teenagers and young adults who are, stepping into the world and being independent, we really have to talk about this. And, and the fact that, look, travel is a privilege. not a playground for chaos, right? Part of wellness is teaching the next generation how to enter other communities with humility, not entitlement. Now, I have to acknowledge this. Not everyone has access to safe, restorative spaces where they live, right? For some people, travel's not a luxury, it's escape from harm, and that is absolutely real. And this conversation isn't about restricting people's access to safety, but really for those who have options, right? Which, uh, that's really who this is targeting. We can ask questions like, are we traveling for restoration? Are we traveling because we've made elsewhere, quote unquote, the only place where we're allowed to rest? Because there's a deeper question. If wellness only works when you leave your life, what does that tell you? If your home, your routines, your daily environment constantly is draining to you, is the solution more escape? Or or is the invitation really to build a life that doesn't require constant escape? Maybe the most radical wellness move isn't another retreat or a detox something. Maybe it's improving your relationship with your everyday environment, right? Exploring your own neighborhood like a visitor, learning the history of, your tongue, wherever your city, supporting local businesses, finding beauty closer to home, What if we invested in our communities the way we invest in destinations? Those are just some things to think about. And look, I'm the furthest thing from anti travel, right? What I am is anti unconscious travel. I'm anti pretending that flying or cruising or whatever across the world for a 2 hour spa experience has no footprint, right? We hop on a flight for hours to go someplace for a few hours and then come right back. That has an impact. So I'm anti calling everything that looks luxurious self care or wellness without examining the cost, And we can hold that nuance, right? We can love exploration and still question excess. We can, seek novelty, yes, but you can seek it without turning the planet into like a trash bin or a backdrop, And here's what conscious travel could really look like, because there's a way. If you're going to travel, what if you just built contribution maybe into the itinerary? What if one day of the trip you supported some local organization? Maybe it could be a conservation effort. Maybe it's some community initiative. Maybe it's simple as buying locally, supporting a locally owned business instead of some multinational chain. What if wellness wasn't just about extraction and take, but about exchange? Because I mean, healing that depends entirely on consumption, that's really fragile. It's just a fragile system. But healing that includes reciprocity, now that's solid. That's real. So and then there's the part that might feel like a little, I hope it feels like a little wake up call. We can't just keep outsourcing our peace, right? We can't just keep believing that a better version of ourselves lives in some other country. If your body only relaxes in a perfectly curated environment, if your mind only slows down when you're unreachable, if your joy depends on as much distance as possible, that's some information. That's information. And it might not truly be about travel. It might just be about your life, the way you're living your life, maybe some things you haven't addressed or you need to address. Travel can definitely expand you, but it can't regulate you. It can't heal what you refuse to address. It can't replace community. It cannot compensate for the burnout. It just cannot fix disconnection, right? Those are daily practices. Those are like structural changes, and those are relationship shifts. So, maybe the question shouldn't be where should I go next? Maybe it should be what am I trying to feel? And is there a way to cultivate that feeling here, like right where I am? Because wellness that's entirely built on escape is temporary. But the one that transforms your everyday environment, now that's what we call sustainable. That's lasting. Travel, explore, see the world. I just want you to do it awake. Do it consciously. Do it with respect, with curiosity, with responsibility, with reciprocity. And then maybe, the real flex doesn't have to be how far you traveled. Maybe it could be, how deep are your roots right where you are. and whether your life, right where you are, feels worth staying present for. So I hope this got you to just think about it. If this episode challenged you, or maybe even just, hit a nerve, maybe it might kind of irritated you a little bit, leave it in the comment section. Let's talk about it. Drop a comment. Do you think wellness, self-care, travel helps you reset or helps you escape? If this conversation resonated, please make sure that you like the video. Even if you want to be mad at what I said, like the video so we can talk about it, okay? And subscribe if you're here for thoughtful, nuanced conversations about health and wellness that don't just rely on hype and trends and, following at what just seems to be popping at the moment. Like, subscribe. Take care of your everyday life, beautiful people, and the story you tell yourself about it. It might be better than you think. So travel consciously, stay curious. As always, happy health and peace.